So the next few moments, I just want to set a little bit of a context of our thinking around why we believe the world should change from disease care to health care. And I think it always, whenever we have these conversations, so it's nothing new, it always starts with patients. And so if you bear with me, I'd like to share with you the story of Kaisi Terry. So Kaisi was born in October 2009. You can just look at her picture. You can see that she was a young girl, young lady full of energy. She loved gymnastics. She loved cheerleading. If you talk to her parents, they would always say she was the center of attention wherever she was at. Not only was she the center of attention, full of energy, when we visited with them, they said they never remembered her being sick a day in her life. And so her life was such that she had just a little over 5.5 on a January morning. It was a Sunday morning. As Kaisi did with her family, she went to church as a normal morning would. She came home after church, and she really wasn't feeling the best, had a little bit of a headache, and so her parents said, "Why don't you take a nap?" Which she did. She woke up, was feeling good enough at the end of the nap to play games with her brothers, which she always enjoyed doing, and then went to bed. The next morning she woke up, wasn't feeling the best, and her parents said, well, she must have the flu. And so they said, why don't you stay home from school on Monday, which she did. And on Tuesday, when her brothers came down with what they thought was the flu as well, they said, yes, our confirmation she does have the flu was right. And so they all stayed home from school. But unfortunately, on Thursday, when her brothers felt better and went back to school, Kaisi didn't. And on Friday, after not eating almost for a week, or barely eating for a week, they took her into the emergency room where they quickly identified her with diabetic ketoacidosis, a blood glucose level of 1,068. They put her on a helicopter, rushed her to Salt Lake City. She was living in a small town in Utah. Unfortunately, on the way, she suffered seizures, and Kaisi never saw her 6th birthday. Now, all of us know that Kaisi wasn't feeling great on Saturday, perfectly healthy, and overnight came up with this disease of DK, which obviously then is type 1 diabetes. A number of us, as Paul said in his opening thoughts, right, we have diseases that are incubating, but most of the time we don't do anything about it until the clinical manifestations appear. And I think all of us are challenged to say, why do we wait? In fact, we believe that 100 years from now, people will look back on us and say, can you imagine there was this time in life, a time in healthcare, where people waited till they had a disease before they did something about it? Almost as if that was just like, it would be like unheard of thinking. And that's what we're trying to solve in what we call the World Without Disease Accelerator. Now, why is that a problem? Well, the problem is today, as you know, the good news is most of us are living longer. That's positive. The downside is as we live longer, many of us gain, I call little baggages along the way, if we could call them that, little comorbidities. And as we get older, we get more and more of those, right? And so as you get to be in your 70s, the majority of people have 2, 3+ comorbid conditions. And so if we basically say that we're going to live longer, but we don't change the trajectory of health, the promise is that we're going to live longer, unhealthier lives, which isn't attractive, I don't think, for any of us. But the question is, as you think about with Kaisi, as you think about maybe some of our parents or some of the friends that we know that all of a sudden present with a disease, all of us are, if we could say it this way, incubating disease in some way, shape, or form, but we're not sure what it is because on the outside, how we normally look at people or how we feel ourselves, we feel healthy. But what would happen if we could truly identify these diseases that each of us are incubating and could address it before they manifest with clinical symptoms? And that's what spawned about 5 years ago at Johnson & Johnson in the Janssen group of pharmaceutical companies, this concept of we envision a world where disease becomes a historical artifact. It's a phenomenal vision. It has a lot of other consequences, which I'm more than glad to talk to you about the break. But we feel like to really put out a bold statement, to really change the course of disease, we need to think boldly. And so that's our vision. Now, how are we going to achieve that? Well, what you heard from Paul is, let's start at the beginning. And the idea is if people are healthy, let's do all that we can to keep them healthy. And that requires what? That requires different skill sets than what we maybe would have down where we're treating disease. It requires our understanding of nutrition. It requires our understanding of behavioral science. It requires our understanding of early detection, of the immune system, of the endocrine system, of the neurological system, and doing all that we can early in life to keep people healthy. But also, if for some reason someone veers off course a little bit and starts to incubate a disease, and we can do that by probing the different systems we now know, and we are now gaining more and more understanding on a day-to-day basis, and we can understand changes, which we're going to hear later about, in the immune system that could be picked up very, very, very early, and we can identify those people headed toward disease. Let's intercept the disease. So going back to the story of Casey, we know today that if someone has multiple autoantibodies to a wide range of insulin or other beta cell proteins, they will have type 1 diabetes with a 100% chance in their lifetime. The question is it 2 years, 4 years, 5 years, or 10 years? But they will have it. So the question is, even though they're not insulin dependent at that point, but they have the presence of 2 autoantibodies, should we wait for them to have a clinical manifestation to treat the disease? Or should we intercept the disease as we can see it before there is an onset of this clinical morbidities? And then, let's just say we can't keep people all the way healthy, or we miss it for some chance, and we can't intercept the disease, then our goal truly is to cure the disease versus treat the symptoms. A different paradigm requires different technologies, both in terms of measurement, monitoring, and intervention. And at the same time, as we'll talk about later, will require potentially different business models and different regulatory models for us to be truly successful. But if we focus on the transformational medical innovation where we can make a significant difference in people's lives, so what are we doing and what are we going to talk to the panelists about? Is at Janssen, we're focusing on diseases where we can make a difference, where we understand the core disease pathology so that we can probe the system to understand where you're at in the course of disease and truly make a difference there. And we understand that some disease areas and some disease specific diseases we're further along than we are in others. And so let's start where we can be pulled by the science. Second is we don't believe we can do this by ourselves. It requires what we're calling a coalition of the willing. It requires other pieces of the ecosystem to work together, whether it's the diagnostic piece or the digital therapeutic piece or the nutritional piece, that we can provide holistic solutions to individuals so they can incorporate and integrate those into their lives so they can truly prevent, intercept, and stay healthy, keep the healthy people healthy. And then the third is thinking about business model innovation. Right? We're not asking people to no longer pay for a product or normal fee for service, but how would we think about sharing risk, or how would we look at new models that will reward healthy performance or overall health of an individual, no matter what that looks like? And so just as we see in the other industries, whether it's the entertainment industry or the music industry, as new transformational innovation came there, it also came along with new business model innovation. And part of what we're working on, and we'd love to, again, an invitation out to this audience, and we'll talk to our speakers here, our panelists in a second, is to help us to think through what are some of these business models that can help spur. Because what we know is when we have solutions that work, whether it's the case of the statins or the osteoporotic drugs, or think of work that's done in Hep C for liver cancer, the system rewards it. So you need to start with innovation, but at times you may need new business models. So we believe the patients are waiting, and we're here to help them live into what we believe is a world without disease.